Hi, everybody. This is Lama Justin, and yeah, thank you for coming to attend Mahamudra for the People. I want to say maybe this is number 15, although I'm not 100% sure. I just want to get a sense of who is here. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of checking in the chat box, that would be great. The funny thing about this platform is that it's hard to see. Well, I can't see anybody, so I'm just going to set a timer because I was thinking we could start off with some meditation like we have in the past. And okay. All right. Tim and Payne and Javi. All right. So I am in upstate New York, just by Lake George, getting I need a break from the city. So that's why this barn is behind me. But I also thought it'd be nice to do some meditation outside because that's kind of where I prefer to practice. So if we can, let's do a bit of practice. We'll sit for about 20 minutes and then get to a little bit of talking about Mahamudra. So again, as we've done in the past, try and allow yourself to come into direct relationship with the space around you and your experience in the moment. If it helps to bring your awareness to breath, to every inhalation and exhalation, go ahead and do that. Or if you want to use an object in your field of reference as a support, you can do that. Or if you want to use mind itself as a support, of course you can do that as well. And we'll sit this way for about 20 minutes. And slowly bring yourself back to being together. The cricket is driving you crazy, Jack. Oh. That is a crazy cricket. So I had a chance to talk with Jessica and Jessie, and she let me know that and even though I couldn't make it last Friday, and I apologize for that, that many of you had a chance to meet together as a group, and I wanted to see if there was anything that came up during that meeting that maybe you wanted me to address or hear or speak to. So if there's anything that has feels particularly salient still, please feel free to share, and you can ask a question in the question box, or we can use the chat bar to. Last week we had a funeral for a correction officer who was killed with the previous weekend. I don't think they actually have caught the person who shot him, but it was a crazy week, and so I couldn't get to speak at the funeral, which was on Friday, so I had to miss the session. But it sounds as if it was a good meeting for all of you. So if there is anything, feel free to chime up or ask a question or do whatever it is that you feel like you need. I also want to see if anybody's been working with that last passage from Flight of the Garuda about kind of inviting or invoking different kinds of klesha experiences or emotional experiences and sitting with them and looking at from where they arise and from where they may depart. Okay. It seems like there are no questions. I want to come back to Shabkar, who wrote, oh, there's a question. Okay, let's see. So Payne writes, with Shabkar instructions, there's a very intense kind of pressure around my heart when doing them. I get a little afraid, and then I integrate into the instructions. But I'm just hoping I'm not getting any wind stuck in there. Anything to say? Yeah, so when we do these kinds of instructions or engage in them, when we're cultivating difficult emotions or kind of invoking them so that they can arise for us, a lot of different physiological responses might arise, and sometimes it's a direct response to how charged the emotion is. And it's generally considered a good thing if we're able to actually invoke something that really makes us react, right? That makes us, we have a physiological reaction. So it could be a tightening in the chest. or this experience of fear, I wouldn't worry so much about, getting wind stuck there. I think at this point, what is more important is allowing these difficult experiences to arise. And I mean, I will say that just given kind of the constancy of current events, where we're constantly surrounded by strong emotions. I see this on social media all the time. I notice myself just, all I need to do is look at a news app, and every kind of thing kind of floods in, right? And so this kind of instruction is really powerful for these times. Really, the essence of them, though, is to, when Sopin, in your particular case, when that fear arises, try and rest within that fear and just look very lightly at where it seems the fear might be coming from, or where anxiety might be coming from, or where pain, not your name, pain, but pain, anxiety. And sometimes, if we find ourselves getting too triggered, then it's usually best to actually kind of just, allow ourselves a little bit of time to stabilize a little bit. It's important to remember that these practices are not meant to kind of, trigger us or re-trigger us. If we inadvertently end up finding that, we were kind of reliving something, then if we can bring that to our practice, then it's good to begin to, cut our teeth, so to speak, on these kind of more difficult experiences. And then should it be that, one is concerned about, energies kind of settling in the body, one thing you can do is just kind of rotate your core, almost like you're doing a hula hoop, you know, do it like, 4 times, 5 times clockwise and then counterclockwise. And it just kind of lets the energies kind of settle back down. We haven't done much work with this kind of stuff yet. So I realize that might seem a little strange. But different kinds of, these are kind of like, yoga techniques allow us to be able to kind of bring the energies back, to settle. So if, you kind of move as if you're slowly, kind of, doing the hula hoop, and then the other way, that kind of helps to kind of bring everything back down. Kyle says he's been building a shed to have space to practice, and it's brought up many painful feelings. And so just trying to sit with those as best you can. And yeah, I mean, I'll say, like, I had to, attend, even though I'm on vacation, a senior staff meeting online, and in the midst of it, I was getting berated by, some high up person, and, by email while we're like looking at each other on the screen. And, I find myself in those moments, irritated, frustrated that I'm on vacation and having to go through this. And in that moment, just, I tried my best to just sit in relationship to the emotions as they arise, and to just look, and all it is looking. Like, it's very simple. You just look at where they come from. And it doesn't have to be like a complex psychoanalytic kind of thing. Like, well, it comes from the fact that I feel, afraid of losing my job. It's not. It doesn't have to be like that. It's literally like, as this thing arises, like, where does it come from? And then as it is there, and there's this process of experience. Does it stay there? Where does it go? You know? And the fun thing about this, not to sound like a nerd, is that the process of constant experimentation allows us to kind of sometimes go down the rabbit hole and say, oh, okay, well, actually, and then we find ourselves, all the way down there, and then we find ourselves there, and then we could just bring ourselves back to awareness of space, and then look, is it still there? And the so I've several people asked me recently, like, um, you know, in much more polite ways than this, but like, why do this? And the point is we can read songs by Tilopa or Naropa or Saraha or Marpa or Mantrepa or various Karmapas or all sorts of people on the nature of our mind, and those are wonderful. They're great sources. They're to be relied on, and yet without definitive experience in the moment of mind, really having that experiential knowledge, it's still intellectual, right? So even though, Longchenpa or, somebody will describe the mind as being clear and vast and no difference between thoughts and space, like that's wonderful, right? And there's a difference, though, between having memorized that and having direct experience of that. And the way that we begin to have confidence in direct experience in that is to come back and to come back and to come back, you know. And it's also important to recognize that some kleshas or some emotions will be not that triggering, and we'll be able to really um, see clearly into what their true nature is. And then others will be harder. They'll be harder for many reasons. They'll be harder as a result of, um, our individual history. They'll be difficult in relationship, perhaps, to family history or family trauma. And again, there's no judgment around, there being any kind of family or generational trauma. But I feel confident in saying that we all have generational traumas of different, kinds and varying degrees. So it's not about trying to get to a state of there not being generational trauma, but it's beginning to have a relationship to generational trauma that's a relationship rooted in both a combination of wisdom and then compassion. And the compassion is for ourselves, and the wisdom is the ability to look into the experiences and see how they arise, and to experience them in the moment, and to see what happens next, without a need to kind of chase it, without a need to create anything, but just basic, pure awareness, non judgmental observation. So Tim writes that he got into a rather heated argument with a family member and found the instruction to be with the anger as it arose and lingered to be very helpful. The anger did carry me away, but after a while, the sheer energy of the anger didn't seem entirely bad. It brought a sharpness to my awareness. the feeling of animosity faded. Yes, anger is a really powerful one. I mean, obviously it's powerful because, like, sometimes, it's like lighting a whole book of matches at one time, and it just kind of flashes. And then we become activated and heightened. Our sense of focus when we're angry is amazing. And so for that, there's no, like, anger really is a form of clarity. And then, this reactive kind of, experience of wanting to act on animosity as a result of anger is where anger gets tricky. So working on the practice, and again, different situations with anger will be different, right? There are going to be some people, perhaps family or friends, loved ones, or enemies, or whoever it is, will make us angry in a way that really is volatile and hard to, begin to kind of, understand and maybe pull the reins in just so you could watch. And then, another different kind of anger might be a very fast passing thing in which you can very quickly just, see it arise, experience without reacting, and letting go, and just letting it, almost like a cloud or dew, just naturally kind of, evaporate. Sometimes it evaporates as a result of, being recognized by awareness. So, George, I'm a nerd as well. um, and so, it is. This is about letting go, but it's also about more than letting go. It's about cultivating genuine, authentic wisdom and recognition around the nature of mind, the nature of thought as it arises, the nature of experience as it arises. And so, I've mentioned this before. I feel like this is probably more my own kind of, limited knowledge speaking, but I keep coming back to Gampopa's Precious Garland of the Supreme Path, where he talks about, there being these three ways of working with obstacles that arise on the path. And the first is to avoid them. So, I can't speak for other people, but for myself, moving through space as a genuine human being who feels, I can't avoid emotion, and I'm not actually interested in trying to avoid, emotion or to avoid experience. So for Gampopa, there's avoidance, there's transformation, and there's resting in the experience. And so we've talked a little bit about transformation in the past. And so transformation might be these practices of being able to see emotions as, perhaps you could say, like the display of the deity, right? Or, taking time to transform anger into patience or into compassion. And that can be helpful. But really, what these instructions are is allowing ourselves to rest in them as they arise. So, anger, frustration, jealousy, attachment, pride. Ignorance is a hard one because, that kind of dullness of ignorance almost precludes our ability to actually recognize it. And nevertheless, we try. So Payne writes, he got into a very bad fight with Laurel on Sunday night. And in the heat of it, remembered the anger teaching, the immediacy of the entire narrative I was caught in. She did X to me and I'm mad. Just poof. It was honestly kind of jarring. Just poof. And that's that's a very useful way of recognizing, some of the utility of this. And again, like, when we ask ourselves, like, okay, well, like, why do this, right? Well, one of the reasons why we do it, or why we perhaps ought to consider doing it, is because if we take just like an honest stock of the past year, or no, not even, that's overwhelming. The last 2 weeks, and we really look at whether or not we find ourselves reacting to difficult experiences in a way that does not cause harm to others. If for the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks you have not been triggered, you have not found yourself pushed and reacted in a way that somehow, even, in a slight way, caused harm to others, whether it be even, a mosquito, like, hey, get away, or that that cricket, god damn it, or whatever it is, then maybe this instruction isn't needed. But if you have, right, if you have fallen into this trap of misperceiving what is arising and externalizing it, right, in a reactive way, almost automatically, then this instruction could be useful. And some of the way we would take, like, all the politics of the day, like with the DNC and the reaction to, like, the Democratic National Convention, and the RNC and the reaction to the RNC. These past 2 weeks easily feel like a roller coaster. And so even if the reactivity is internal and directed at ourselves, that too is a reason why letting go is really important. Learning how to begin to first be aware of what's happening. That's the first piece. Sometimes in the beginning, we're not even aware of klesha activity. We're just kind of caught right up into it. We don't even see it. We don't even, recognize it. And then as our practice deepens, we're able to recognize, oh boy, here comes this wave of anger, and you recognize it, and before you know it, you're taken away and you're yelling or something, or banging on something, whatever. Or, if our practice deepens, then we're able to recognize it as it arises, recognize it and how we feel, watch it. It's like a bird, watching a bird. There's some bushes around here with hummingbirds, so it's like watching the hummingbird of our emotion, not reacting. I can't go run up to the hummingbird and hug it, kiss it, or say I like you, or say please go away, I don't feel like a hummingbird right now. Right? So you just let that appearance arise and gently allow it to move into the next phase. So Kao said he's been holding off until our next one-on-one to ask, but to your point of the necessity for direct experience of the nature of mind over the past month, he's completely stopped trying to watch or see or try anything in my daily practice, like at all, trying to figure out if I'm just perhaps bypassing or disassociating. Should I continue this way, or should I bring back the effort he had before? So this question is a good one, and this, and I don't mean this, with any disrespect, Kyle. This is a question that I've heard people ask frequently over the past few weeks, and I appreciate the attention to detail with respect to being concerned about bypassing. So with Mahamudra, the practice requires some effort and it requires some letting go, right? The effort piece is like, let's say with the beginning of basically what this Shabkar song is really looking at is Laktong, or special insight, a form of vipassana. Effort is needed in the sense of needing to recognize, right? Not needing to recognize, but actual recognizing what's arising. And so at first we might not be able to do that. And so if we are not able to do that because everything is so overwhelming, then we apply a little bit of effort. And just like paddling a boat, just a little bit, little effort, and let go. I don't know if anybody here has ever, in my sordid past, I was once a contractor, and I did all sorts of interior renovations. And then before that, I did a lot of work as a house painter, primarily because it allowed me to have like a transient kind of lifestyle, so I can make money and then leave after a job or something like that. And there are all sorts of activities like house painting where you need to paint like a straight line where the wall, they call it cutting, like where the wall meets the ceiling, this right angle. And so as you're cutting the edge, you need to be focused and very loose. You need to be focused because, if you get paint on the ceiling, there's just this glaring, inaccuracy of the line. But then, depending on how old the room is, there could be all sorts of lumps and stuff. And so there, you end up needing to kind of create this, line that's an approximation for the whole thing to work. And if you become overly fixated, right, put too much effort, it is a torturous process. But if you're able to basically kind of, do this thing where, you kind of have your breath half stopped, your awareness focused, and then paint that line, it works. There needs to be this balance between effort and non-effort sometimes. Letting everything go and just, experiencing is fine if you can do that. Right? And then, so that's where this gets tricky, is genuinely knowing if, what you're doing is authentically effective or not. And this makes me think of that story of Milarepa, where before Milarepa met Marpa, he met a Dzogchen, a Dzogchen teacher, who gave him this Dharma instruction to, basically like do what I'm doing by being outside and, lay down and gaze at the sky and just let your mind rest. Right? And to rest freely during the day and to rest freely at night and to rest freely in between, allowing no thought activity to arise. Right? And Milarepa was like, wow, this is a really, easy instruction. And, it was basically just kind of laying around. And what he failed to recognize is that he failed to be aware, right? He failed to have the ability to recognize Rigpa or awareness while doing the practice. And so he was basically just kind of laying around, and all these kind of, thoughts were arising, and he wasn't even conscious of them. All sorts of, associative kind of, things in the clouds. So it looks like a rhinoceros or a giraffe. not recognizing that, he's basically, not doing anything. Um, so that's where the balance needs to be. What is awareness? And so this is actually a good segue um, into maybe looking at what that is. My advice is to continue and offer yourself a little bit of just kind analysis as to what is going on in this moment. Am I truly, is there the experience of awareness arising in this moment, or is this the experience of kind of like a thoughtless dullness? Now this gets a little tricky, like I'll admit, because what arises sometimes before the experience of having kind of clear, consistent recognition of awareness is a thoughtless state. Things kind of settle naturally. And so, again, these practices are experimental, and they change. So I would say keep going, but just be a little, self-critical, not in the sense of, oh man, what am I doing? I'm messing up again. But more in from, just this like, what it is? It's like a painter. I don't know if I keep coming back to this, but I can't not for some reason. Um, you know, or a writer or anyone doing anything creative, like in the process of creation, there's also this kind of acknowledgement of the kind of basic aesthetics of what it is that we're doing, and being able to recognize, um, where does this fit in with respect to kind of hitting the mark. So Kyle writes, the alternative to me was watching myself meditate. That's what I wanted to let go of, and now I'm experiencing this unconsciousness, also this mindful natural rest as well, and just playing with that. So play with it. And I mean, I think on one level, like, we can sit in meditation and be aware of the fact that we're sitting, right? And be aware of the fact that that experience is relatively contrived. So my curiosity is whether or not you can take that awareness and expand that outward to wherever you are in the moment. So that this experience of awareness is not just Kyle meditating, but this awareness is awareness of space, maybe, 100 feet all around you, all the while remaining aware of breath, of sound, of thought activity if it's arising, and if it's not arising, to not worry. And just rest. And again, I would kind of fall back a little bit onto Tulipa's Six Nails too. I mean, that's a really nice guidepost. Letting go of the past, letting go of the future, resting in the present moment, not doing anything, right? Not analyzing, not controlling. What does it mean to not control? And, again, with respect to these difficult emotions or the kleshas as they arise, like how to let these things arise without controlling them. And that's hard too, because sometimes, like, our system of values, say, oh, I'm a positive person. I only want positive experiences. That's fine. But if we get so habituated in that direction, then when it could be that when a negative experience arises, it's all the more unsettling, or causes us to be reactive. And so it can be helpful to be, the yogini or the yogi who is just able to accept whatever arises. And kind of another kind of neat metaphor, I think, is, just as the Buddha and the early Sangha would beg for their food, right? They'd kind of go throughout town with a begging bowl and beg for alms. What we as Dharma practitioners are basically doing is we have our bowl and we are begging for experience, direct experience. Right? So we're begging for thought activity. We're begging for the absence of thought activity. We're begging for kleshas. We're begging for sensory experiences of wind, temperature, the way the clothing sits on our bodies, experience of breathing, experience of being embodied. This is what we're seeking to, ask for. So in so doing, it's helpful to just be completely open and not, exhibit preference. Because from preference comes habit, habit creates construct, construct creates concept, concept creates suffering. So this is a short passage from Shabkar. This is only one page. And this comes from Flight of the Garuda. So if you can, we'll do what we've done before, which is just relax your body, sit in meditation, bring your awareness to this particular moment, and allow whatever sound you're hearing from my words to basically just naturally hit your ears and cause whatever kind of, reaction to happen. And just rest. So this is on investigating the mind. If you do not inquire into your own mind, whatever virtuous spiritual practices you have undertaken will not hit the vital point. This thing called mind is full of moving activity. If you chase after it, you cannot grasp it. It vanishes and dissolves. If you try to put it somewhere, it will not rest, but fidgets to and fro. This thing, this so-called mind of yours, is without exact location, is utterly empty and pervasive, yet it is the experiencer of a myriad of joys and sufferings. Look and experience. Look and see. From where does this mind first arise? From where is it first born? Where does it currently abide? What shape does it have? When in the end thoughts have vanished from the basic ground of their own inherent condition, ask yourself, to where have they disappeared? To where have they gone? Minutely analyze. When thoughts have expired, how is it that they have passed away? Examine the birth and the expiration, the coming and going of thoughts. Investigate until you establish for yourself, definitively, mind's unidentifiable emptiness and inexpressible, totally liberated purity. That last line is just so beautiful. Investigate until you establish for yourself, definitively, mind's unidentifiable emptiness and inexpressible, totally liberated purity. So, Shabkar is giving us the clue. Mind is unidentifiable emptiness and inexpressible, totally liberated purity. We need to be able to experience it for ourselves. And so, can we do that? Can we allow ourselves to sit in kind of open, natural awareness and let whatever happen happen? And what is it like when we let go? So Payne writes that I used to desire for experience as the object of desire. I'm sorry, I use desire for experience as the object of desire. Even though there are only 5 things listed, nothing seems unusable in this instruction. Just resting. So I'm going to give another instruction. In this one, this one's more on the cultivation of awareness. So, again, take a moment to rest into this particular moment. This one's basically the same length. Perceive the primordial mind essence, which does not arise, cease, or abide, that is free of the stain of limiting conceptions, of mental elaborations, of center and periphery. It is not composed of any essential nature at all, though it appears as diverse and radiant arisings. Even as it arises, it lacks anything that arises with either basis or root. Allow this naked and vividly present awareness, which is beyond all and every mental reification, beyond speaking or imagining, which is inconceivable and effable to freely unfold. It is completely relaxed and open. It is all outer appearances. All inner awareness, without exception, is utterly unobstructed wisdom, which has no need to reject the bad and afflictive emotions usually meant to be rejected. Perceive this natural state that appears imperceptibly as the natural state of primordial isness. Let the unchanging wisdom of experiential awareness arise deep within your mind. Loosen up to the fresh and spontaneous presence of the sheer suchness of walking, moving around, lying down, and sitting, of body, speech, mind, and all actions, until totally free, uncontrived, and natural self-radiance. Sustain a state of being that is merely undistracted, naked, and completely relaxed and open. Practicing like this, your own mind will actually be transformed into the mind of Samantabhadra, and its arising as the body of absolute reality itself will be brought to completion. Loosen up into the fresh and spontaneous presence of the sheer suchness of walking, moving around, lying down, and sitting, of body, speech, mind, and all actions, into totally free, uncontrived, and natural self-radiance. Sustain a state of being that is merely undistracted, naked, and completely relaxed and open. So this really is getting at what the experience of Rigpa or Rigpa or awareness is. Especially this first line, perceive the primordial mind essence which does not arise, does not cease, or does not abide, that is free from the stain of limiting conceptions, of mental elaborations of center or periphery. So that is the nature of awareness. It's vast, without edge, without center or periphery. Right? So I don't have to worry about falling off of it or not having enough of it. And just resting in that experience. Thank you, Wambui. So how is this feeling? Too loose? Not loose enough? Did everyone become enlightened? I hope. Lots of crying. Just resting. And I think the thing that's the most amazing about these kinds of instructions is, this kind of simultaneity between how we are our worst enemy, and when we're able to rest, we are completely realized. And we don't need to look outside of our experience. We don't need to look outside of what happens. We don't have to. We certainly don't have to buy anything. That's a good thing, because we have it all here, right? It's all just happening. So, with respect to what we were talking about previously, with whatever thought activity arises, or the klesha combinations, or whatever it is, that kind of pops up like little puppets, we just experience and allow awareness basically to hold what happens without trying to impact, right? Without trying to, make an impression, without trying to direct. It's kind of like puppets without strings. And if for some reason nothing arises, then maybe we're able to directly experience awareness, which is vast, limitless. And again, to rely on these words, the primordial mind essence, which does not arise or does not cease and does not abide. Right? So we're taking all the striving out of it. It's not abiding, so we don't need to recognize it. It doesn't arise, so we don't have to look for it somewhere. It doesn't cease, so we don't have to, look for where did it go? We don't have to do that either. Free of the stain of limiting conceptions, so that which is beyond concept, perhaps that which undergirds the play of concepts without mental elaboration, without center, or without periphery. and we don't need to do much. Rest. And so this is what Tilopa's getting at the last point of Tilopa's 6 nails. Rest. Relax and rest. Whereas initially Milarepa was like, relax and rest. Okay, like I'm going to lean back, and just, I'm going to chill out, especially after murdering all those people. And wouldn't you want to like just chill out? But, his issue was that he hadn't done the initial groundwork, which requires a little bit of effort and a little bit of discipline, practice of shamatha and the practice of lakton, before he could just rest without concept. Now, the other really helpful thing about this instruction is this line that I repeated. Loosen up into the freshness and spontaneous presence of sheer suchness of walking, moving around, lying down, and sitting. And so this is to say, experience this as you go about your day. So whatever comes after this session for all of you. Right? He continues by saying, of body, speech, and mind, and all actions. All actions, body, speech, mind. All of your activity into totally free, uncontrived, natural self-radiance. And this begs the question, like, what is uncontrived activity? Just being free without the need to be anything. Oh, what a, it's going to make me get all teary. What a lovely thing. This prison that we keep ourselves in, and the prison that we put other people in by kind of constantly projecting concept onto them, whether justified or unjustified. Doing all that stuff, all that work, all that energy, all that, wasted energy, judging, projecting. Imagine the difference between one person sitting in uncontrived mind essence and the other person sitting and thinking, oh God, it's like humid outside, and oh, the sun's so bright, and is there anyone sell water around here? Oh, I wish I was some other place. And we do that. We do that all the time. It's got to be better, has to be different, can't possibly be this. Really, this is it? And the Mahamudra yogi or yogini and the Dzogchenpa yogini and yogi are like, yeah, this is it. This is it. This mind is it. These crickets are it. That person banging something behind me is it. The birds are it. This fat chipmunk near me is it. So that's our work. And it's funny because I was once, a couple years ago, when I used to work in hospice, I guess it's, 5 or 6 years ago, I used to try and listen to like Buddhist podcasts while I was driving, from home to home to go visit people and be a chaplain. And at one point, I kind of realized that Kent McLeod has or had, I don't know if he still does, like a podcast. And there was this one where he's talking about Mahamudra and brings up this very funny but like very good point that the practice of Mahamudra does not make you a very practical person. and and it's true. Like this kind of experience of resting in awareness is not very practical, at least in America. You know, just being sated by the natural arising appearance is not what corporations want. Just being okay with whatever it is that's happening is not what politicians want. It doesn't make us good at our job necessarily. It doesn't make us more productive. But it makes us content and fulfilled and satisfied. And that is worth more than anything. That's the philosopher's stone of the alchemists. It's the realization of, people from all over. And this is available to us if we continue to practice. So George, sorry, I just saw your comment. So this is actually not from. So this is a Shabkar song, but I'm actually reading. So the first one was from Flight of the Garuda, but I actually took it from The Weapon of Light by Dr. Nida Chanatsang. And the second instruction, that was on page 45. And the second instruction is also from Weapon of Light by Dr. Nida Chanatsang. And that was on page 52. And that was by Yutok Yomteng Gompo, the founder of the Tibetan medical tradition. And Dr. Nida is one of my teachers. He's really profound Nagpa doctor. Yes, that is a lightsaber book. Yeah, it's a powerful book. And there's a much longer book called The Mirror of Light, which is on Trekcha instructions, which are basically, Mahamudra instructions, more or less. They're the equivalent in the Dzogchen tradition, which is helpful. The practice of Togal and Mahamudra are quite different. So those aren't necessarily well suited for kind of blending. But the Trekcha and Mahamudra instructions, could basically be considered the same. Same face of the coin, or two different sides of the same coin. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. Next week we'll return a little bit to Flight of the Garuda. I wish everybody well in their practice, and over the next week, if there is a way of looking at all of the experience that you encounter as a way of kind of holding out the begging bowl of experience, and try not to turn away because you prefer some other thing. The Buddha and all of the kind of early sanghas, they went from place to place begging for food would make it a point to eat whatever was given. And so, in a similar way, as Mahamudra meditators, we should try and make it a point to practice with whatever arises, the good and the bad, the pleasant and the unpleasant, the experience of space, or the experience of overwhelming thought activity. Whatever it is that arises is authentic and to be celebrated and to be directly brought to practice. So with that, I wish you all my very best. May you have a wonderful weekend and a lovely week of practice. Take care.